But I think that gold is going to have to trade, still higher to really ignite the junior micro cap gold companies. And one of the real key factors that when you look at the producers, even down to 50 million, you have to look for those companies that have operating income that's growing. I think that gold should be $4,000 right now. And I think that based on the growth of the monetary base, it looks more like $7,000 to $10,000. It appears that gold has been suppressed. So I think that we're in that sort of creation and AI and Bitcoin proving out that you need to have these decentralized assets like you need to have gold. So I think there's much similarity in their historical significance, except for you can't really wear your Bitcoin because it's digital.
Gold is rising, Bitcoin also, and the world is changing right now. Therefore, I think it's very important to have a look at different assets and especially talk to people that have seen and done a lot when it comes to investing. My today's guest is one of these people. Today with me is Frank Holmes. He is Executive Chairman of Hive Digital Technologies, a Bitcoin miner. He's also CEO and Chief Investment Officer of US Global Investors. He has built up billion-dollar businesses and he manages between 3 and 4 billion asset under management. He has also been seed investor, for example, for the royalty company Franco-Nevada. He was mining fund manager of the year 2006. First of all, Frank, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being with us.
It's great to be with you. It's an interesting exercise to look back on your history, but you don't realize that you're the seed investor in the creation of unicorns and directly creating products. I think it's almost 10 unicorns. So it's and it's never a straight line. It's extremely volatile, and I think it's just exciting to keep your brain young.
You're traveling a lot, right? You've also a JETS ETF and a C ETF, which gives you a good understanding of what's going on in the world and how everything is changing right now. Can you please give us an overview? What situation are we in right now?
I used to have in my global travels many thematic emerging market funds, and what I realized is that the ETF business was going to take over mutual funds. And my board said, you've got to come out and launch an ETF. And I noticed that my flight tickets had gone up dramatically. My options to fly around the world had shrunk. And I said, well, they got to be making a lot of money. I wonder if I could create a product around them. And can I apply my quant approach to picking the airlines and the airports? So in 2015, I launched a quant-based global airline ETF called JETS. And it is listed in London. It's in Mexico. It's in Peru. Its big trading volume is in New York. And it also owns airports. So it owns the De Gaulle Airport if it's public. It owns Beijing. It owns Acapulco. It owns Cancun as a public airport. So it's a really interesting product. It's allowed me to keep a pulse on the global economy. And the biggest growth took place during COVID. Young people like yourself were big buyers of JETS when Warren Buffett was getting out. Because every time there's a global crisis, the airlines fall, and a year later, they're up 130%. So it gave me a real feel. And then I shut down my Eastern European fund, which went from 4 million to 1.4 billion. I got out of all my Russian stocks, but no one in America wants to invest in Eastern Europe with the fear of Putin. So we said, okay, let's shut it down. And I said, well, how do I keep my hands on the pulse of global activity and business? This gives me business and tourism, so I get a great feel. All the planes are packed. They have pricing power. There's no discounts flying out a year out from now. The number of, and especially in the winter season, of young German entrepreneurs that are coders, et cetera, they want to go to Spain or Italy to do their work from a hotel or use Airbnb to rent from. So it's really helped me get a feel for that global travel. So then I said, well, what about moving the manufacturing goods? And that's what I looked at C, and C is the arteries in our body. We need blood to flow from our heart to our brain and through our whole body. Well, if you don't have cargo ships moving all over the world, then you don't have a healthy economy. They put a pulse on that. And so now if you get anything happening in Yemen, then it just only adds to their pricing power. And these are very inexpensive on PE ratios. They pay big dividends. So I went in and there's a quant approach to C. So these are all listed in the New York Stock Exchange, and it's been fun for me to be able to track the global economy in addition to my global PMI, which I write about every week.
So, Frank, we know each other for quite a while, and I think you know Wolfgang for more than 20 years. So, and as you know, we are German, right? And for me, it's always interesting to know how people and investors from the other side of the world are looking into our country. Because when you live in Germany, you think, oh, the politicians, they are so stupid. We've just shut down our nuclear power. Also, our politicians are making many, let's say, stupid decisions over here. But what is your view on Germany? I mean, you live at the other side of the world. Is it worth investing into Germany? What do you think?
Well, when you live in Texas, there's a wonderful history of German blood throughout the great state of Texas, which functions like a country within a country. Just outside of San Antonio, the county of San Antonio where I live is Bear, Bexar, New Braunfels. It's all German towns around San Antonio. So there's a rich history and a feeling for it. And the same thing happened growing up in Canada. There's a wonderful admiration and respect for coming back through the ashes from just destruction, especially after, what is it, almost 4 decades of communist rule from 1949 to 1989. That's in education wise, we're talking about 2 cycles of educated people that are socialist communists. And I think that was about something like 16 million people in 1990 were merged in. What an incredible part of Germany, the West embracing the East and bringing them under the fold of the one language and one culture, but they still have had to deal with 2 generations of sort of communist thinking and socialistic thinking, and become in early 2000 the premier manufacturing country in the world for high quality products. Remarkable. So I think that there's a lot of the admiration, but I know that the world of gold and the blockchain crypto world, I feel that a lot of the politicians have been deeply influenced by Russian propaganda, because they went and did silly things like shut down their nuclear reactors, become reliable, totally dependable upon Russia, things of that nature. But I think it's incredible what the country is able to do, and it wrestles with. It's come off the bottom from last year. I track every month the Purchasing Manufacturing Index of the G20 countries, and Germany is so key, along with China and the US, have a significant, and the Japanese footprint around the world. And it came off from the bottom. So it was really desperate 9 months ago, and it's slowly climbing. And now the global PMI in 1 month is above the 3 months is above 50, which means it's very positive and constructive. And I think that I stay positive that Germany can reposition itself for spectacular growth.
It's not a secret that we are basically in a fight between East and West, right? We have wars in Russia. We have also conflicts in the Red Sea. And for me, it seems to be BRICS against G7 countries. Where will all of this lead to? Do you see any long-term problems, especially for the US, in maintaining its position as the world-leading nation? Will the BRICS make their way to the top? What do you think? Is everything changing right now, or does it just feel like it?
I think the only way is if they control the world. If you think about social media, where you're streaming and you have a huge following, it doesn't exist in China unless the government approves it. And the same thing is in Russia. The social media platforms are basically shut down in those countries. There's next to no cash now in China. It's all through your WePay. Americans can't go there with their credit cards. Germans can't go there. They have to basically convert their currency into the Chinese yuan currency and then pay for everything, and they track everything you do. So you can't be a global fungible currency if you have all these barriers to entry so high. It's not fungible, and so they have become a force. And I love physics, and Germany as a nation, incredible intelligence of people studying physics and theoretical physics. Well, the basic physics is force equals mass times acceleration. So what you plug in there is, you say, what is the mass? Well, in population wise, the mass of America is only 4% of the world's population, so it doesn't have a big mass. But it has a big educated base and has a big GDP. So with that big GDP, when it starts to accelerate, now the US becomes a force around the world. China had, their force was just population. And India, so when they all started eating and consuming, then all of a sudden it became a global force. China's emerged by copying a lot of what Germany's put. I remember my first time going to Germany, to China, and it was German cars in 1991. You look back and you see that they've now emerged to having highway systems, etc. They're doing everything to copy what Germany's done in manufacturing, what America's done, but that doesn't lend itself to really being a global a good country. They want to fund dictators. They like to go into Africa. They like to go in to help. They do build good infrastructure, but they also get involved in the funding of dictators. And dictators will always strip away private property rights. And then human rights. Human rights are deeply connected to property rights. And this all starts back in history in 1215 in the Magna Carta in England, the battle against the king and taking away serfs and sending them off to war. That started to change. And then America, even though the power of the king had diluted, America got fed up and they became an independent country against the power overreaching of the British Empire. So you can see now China is on that other path. I think the balancing act for the world is India. You see that, I can see it in school systems where young kids are showing up and especially studying what they call the STEM classes for science, dominated by, in America, and you see this in Toronto, young Chinese and Indian kids, because their parents are really pushing that. So we're going to get this other generation that will emerge. And when you look at the big, which is very positive geopolitically, but China doesn't want to be part of that. And so I think it does create problems on currency moves. But what we have seen is that the money flow through the US SWIFT system has actually gone up. It's the EU that's gone down. Using the EU as this whole push by China wanting to attack the U.S. Supremacy in the dollar has only actually hurt the EU. Mm-hmm. If you look at the trades that are going through. But I'm told that when they go buy oil with the Saudis, they immediately have to have it converted to U.S. dollars to be fungible around the world. So they may do a transaction with the Chinese, but immediately there's another mechanism to get U.S. dollars. The Chinese continue to buy gold to try to be a global currency, to legitimize themselves. And that's just part of that path. But they basically sworn in Xi is a dictator. And I think that is just has its own problems of any type of centralized controlled system. And decentralized is very, very important for many reasons.
Especially China's central bank is buying gold as if there's no tomorrow. And some people are obviously speculating on, for example, gold-backed currency from the BRICS, from China, in order to push the US dollar from the throne as the world leading currency. What do you think? What role will gold and maybe even Bitcoin, the hard assets, will play in the future? Could there a gold-backed currency? Could there be a Bitcoin-backed currency even? Or is all of this rubbish to you? And do you think we will see the US dollar for many more years?
They both are very, similar, except for there's more love associated with gold. Gold is a great love trade. And much of the India and Indonesia and Vietnam and all these other countries, including China, give gold for love. And those Vietnamese boat people that got out in the 70s first all got out with gold. The Syrians that escaped first had gold. They took off their gold bangles, 24-karat gold bangles, and that's how they got out of the country. So gold is portable wealth, but nothing like Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is a new evolution of the great digital transformation, just like electricity. 20 years after electricity first started showing up in downtown Manhattan with Thomas Edison and JP Morgan funding it, you have Ford Motor Company being created with assembly lines, the global adoption. So I think that we're in that sort of creation and AI and Bitcoin proving out that you need to have these centralized assets like you need to have gold. So I think there's much similarity in their historical significance, except for you can't really wear your Bitcoin because it's digital. Well, what's interesting is that when we talk about China, China has to buy much more gold to get caught up to Fort Knox. And if they're trying to get caught up to their population, they have to buy all the gold in the world for the next 20 years. If you want to do the amount of gold America has for 330 million people versus China, there's a lot more consumption of gold needed in China relative. So but I do think they're going to steadily buy more gold to balance their power. But remember, it's not a fungible currency. Euro is a fungible currency. Japanese yen is a fungible currency. Russian ruble is not. Chinese yuan is not. And so I don't think it's going to ever have that dominance in the global trade. Now, when we talk about Bitcoin, the big banks, the Bank of International Settlements, the big money center banks have had this continuous assault on the credibility of the Bitcoin and Bitcoin network. And what we have to remember, it's we the people for the people built the network. It wasn't built by one government, one bank. It was built by many different people agreeing to, like a new religion. You could say that. It just what happened when Gutenberg came out with the printing press. Only 100 years later, a huge illiteracy increased. People could read and write, and then we have a Protestant movement taking place, Lutheran. So you see that things evolve, and it's really important to recognize that the Bitcoin network is over 18,000 active global validators, and there's only 195 countries. It's grown by the people. Hive plays a role in that because we raise money from institutions and retail, and then we went and built out the system, and then other companies built the system. So it's quite remarkable that no one person built it. And so it's extremely decentralized. It's a very powerful network that has open, people can see all the trades that are out there. The transparency is exceptional. And I think that it's going to only evolve and grow, that the banks are trying to attack it, its credibility, because they want to control it. Now governments are coming out with their own digital currencies. There's been some disasters you've read about with Nigeria of basically imposing this digital currency. The EU is vigorously working on it. And I think that we're going to see that, but I think that Bitcoin is going to be able to be like we had 1776 with the Declaration of Independence, that we the people built this coin that is portable all over the world. This network is all of a sudden, with a lightning facility being built over top of it, along with ordinals for moving NFTs along it, is going to make that network very valuable.
There was no rate cut in Q1, and we definitely won't see 10 of them this year. Will everything turn out different than the market is expecting right now? What do you think? Will we see a rate cut this year? Will we see a new inflationary wave? What do you think?
Well, it's really healthy that the GDP of the PMI is reflecting a stronger economy. It's the best leading indicator for commodity demand and high-paying job creation. 9 months ago, it was on the ground. Now it's rising above 50. So we do see the data points in the US of high credit card, huge debt funding, $1 trillion every 3 months. But if you have PMI rising, then that could be that second wave of inflation you're talking about. But it also lends itself that the rates won't fall. And I think that if there's a financial, some type of a crisis that takes place between now and election, there'll be a reason to drop them for a short period of time. But I mean, I stayed very bullish. A year ago, 18 months ago, I said last year was going to be a great year in the stock market, and everyone said, "Oh no, rates are going up. It'll be a disaster." It was spectacular, and we're seeing that so far again this year. It's an election year, so we just went through this big eclipse. It was a big phenomenon in Texas because in some places you could see it for 4 minutes, but we have 70% of the world's population going through elections this year. 70%. That's pushing like 5 billion people. And we have 5 billion people going through an election. All those politicians from about 130 countries are all promising and promising and promising and get the economy stimulated because reelect me. I'm the guy. Vote me in. And so that's always going to be inflationary, and that's always going to be stronger for the overall economic growth. It's the first time that we've had like an eclipse. This type of eclipse that happened this past couple of weeks. It doesn't happen every year, and this is the first time we've had 70% of the world's population going through an election cycle. The biggest, most important is the GDP of America, which is 25% of the world's GDP. And so we'll see how that unfolds. But there'll be lots of it's literally a boxing match between all these politicians all over the world. But they're going to make lots of promises, and that's good for gold.
Let's talk about gold, right? You're a legend when it comes to investing in commodity stocks and also gold. Gold has already seen quite a rise, but still the miners are quite lagging behind. How do you deal with that? I mean, you're fund manager, and how do you position yourself? I mean, what is your advice to our viewers? What can they learn from you when it now comes to investing into junior and gold stocks?
Well, I think they've had a good bounce. I know our gold funds have had a spectacular bounce and leading the charge against the bigger indexes. But I think that gold is going to have to trade still higher to really ignite the junior micro cap gold companies. And one of the real key factors that when you look at the producers, even down to 50 million, you have to look for those companies that have operating income that's growing. So did the operating income on a per share basis grow for the end of March versus a year ago, or the end of December, the previous year, December? That 12-month rate of change in operating income is usually a precursor to an outperforming gold stock. Mm-hmm. So I think you have to have a little more discipline of buying the gold stocks rather than just saying, I'm going to buy an ETF. Mm-hmm. The ETF that I created is very quant driven. It doesn't have 70 names. I look at a universe of 85 names and I focus on less than 30 names, of which 3 are royalty companies. And they're 10% and re-weighting each year. So I think from that point of view that you have to be focused and make sure that when you go down to a explorer, be very careful that it's better to focus at this stage on buying the most reserves in the ground, even if they're just inferred. So if you buy a micro cap that has the inferred most ounces, then when that gold does take off, those stocks go up 5-fold. The money seems to say, okay, where am I going to find a new place to go? And they always go to what has the most gold per share in the ground. And so we've not seen those. We've seen that they've come off the bottom. We track them all at US Global. And we write about them every week, covering on our World Precious Minerals Fund, which is only for Americans. It basically is focused on those reserves per share. But GoAU is listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and so that's available for anyone. And smart beta, they call it. It's a quant approach to picking gold stocks.
That's good advice, Frank. And you said the gold price has to be even higher for the juniors to take off. Will that happen? Is it possible? Where do you see the gold price right now?
I think that gold should be $4,000 right now. And I think that based on the growth of the monetary base, it looks more like $7,000 to $10,000. It appears that gold has been suppressed or psychologically it's not there. But what we do see in what's called Costco. And Costco in America caters to higher net worth people, higher income people, more educated people that go to buy things bulk. You can buy bulk toilet paper, bulk food, whatever you want. And it was really built around the vision of what Walmart did, but for a higher income person, it's a club. It was built with American Express. And if you look at American Express credit card, the average income is twice what the average of the country is that use American Express. So you have all of a sudden this phenomenon starting last year of consumption of gold bullion. And they started selling wafers of 1 ounce gold. And they sold in a month 100 million ounces of gold. Sorry, $100 million worth of gold, $100 million. And that was a remarkable number. And then there was some article I read that said that it was predominantly professional Chinese Americans and professional from India Americans. So these are women that are working in Silicon Valley in the tech center, but they have this cultural thing called the love trade. And they go shop at Costco, and now it's running at 200 million a month is being bought. And so I think that when that adoption starts to get that groundswell in across the country, it will start to then go to other countries. And that's going to be an influencing factor. And then we'll start to see the price of gold 2,700, 2,800. And then that creates its own momentum. Then the junior gold stocks the micros will get ignited when there's some mergers of the mid cap. So last year you had Newmont there's been big mergers, but there's been no really going after the Pac-Man, the small assets yet. And so once that happens, that'll be like a catalyst that the valuations all go up. They go up exponentially. They don't go slowly. They just pop. So today is the time to be accumulating on the down days in gold, those companies that have the most reserves in the ground.
Frank, let's also talk about Bitcoin, right? You are, as I already said, the executive chairman of Hive Digital Technologies. That's the first public listed Bitcoin miner in Canada, and you also have a data center business which is growing quite fast. Hive is hodling some of their Bitcoin in the balance sheets. And to me, it sounds as if you're looking at Bitcoin as another very good investment alternative in the current turbulent times, right? Why exactly do you think that? Why are you with Hive? Give us a little bit of an overview.
Well, I couldn't launch in 2017. I saw the regulatory world wouldn't allow an ETF. And I have my other ETFs listed on the New York Stock Exchange and London. And so I went out to participate in the creation of Hive at the time. And Hive was immediately mining Ethereum in Iceland, then Sweden, and then Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin is mining in Canada. We've grown from I think 5 megawatts in the past 7 years to 130 megawatts of electricity. So it's been an incredible journey of seeing the growth. And I try to explain to people that John, when you go to conferences, mining conferences, there's a smaller group of people. And when we saw each other, it was remarkable to see 65 people came out for dinner. I mean, that just doesn't happen often in Zurich. And the mining conferences are in Cambridge and in Vancouver. They're not as big as they used to be. But you go to a crypto event, and I was just in Paris for Blockchain Week. 6,000 people at the Louvre, first class. And so you go to another metaverse. It's another world. You put on these 3D glasses, and it's another ecosystem functioning. In Miami, they had a couple of years back 30,000 people. They're going to move that conference to Nashville this year, and they're expecting 15,000 people. Consensus next month is going to be in Austin, and they're expecting 8,000 people to spend $1,000 a ticket to get in, not free. So you're got to ask yourself, what is going on? And that's what I did in 2017. I went to Consensus, and I see the CEO of Fidelity that never speaks at investment conferences speaking at a crypto event, and why she's been mining Bitcoin in Quebec. Something big is happening. Thousands of people there. And so what we're seeing is a demographic shift where millennials and Generation Z have adopted from gamers, have adopted rewards in digital currency, have easily to adopt Bitcoin. For my generation and your parents, it would be mileage points. So you got mileage points on Lufthansa Air, and then you could turn around and upgrade, or you could buy more tickets, you could share them, etc. That was the first sort of concept of digital money outside of the currency. It became a currency on its own. What Bitcoin does is it went through a genesis of 91 was the creation of basically the blockchain concept, and 10 years later comes out SHA-256, which is the software, which is the encryption. It's very important encryption that you use on your iPhone for facial recognition. That gets basically layered over, and someone writes, like I love to say, Mozart's 21st Symphony Jupiter. That's what Satoshi basically wrote. It's a symphony. It's an incredible piece of software that you can't hurt. And if anyone tries to attack it, the Bitcoin network every 10 minutes validates and will throw it out. It's gone. So it has not been hackable, and many have tried. So when I saw that evolution taking place, and when I first went into the journey, there was only 9,000 people in the network. It's more than doubled. The number of people that have their own wallets off these exchanges because of the scandals. And a lot of those scandals took place because the big banks influenced the regulators, who then influenced the auditors, and no big auditors, and don't allow any audits to happen in anyone in crypto. Therefore, they actually invited in criminals, or people that commit fraud, like Sam Bankman. But the crypto mining CEOs, and that myself included, in America, they're all members of YPO, many of them, and they represent 40% of the world's production. The sophistication of Hive is just another level compared when Hive first went public. And I remember, because saw these other companies that came out of the US, there was no professionalism. That's all changed. It's so professional. The network has grown, and now we have an ETF in the US that had a record binge buying that's never been seen before. We're going to see this adoption of Bitcoin grow around the world. Governments are going to try to come up with their own cryptocurrency. And I don't, if they'll be successful, but I think the Bitcoin will just go through a journey of a lot of doubters. What we're seeing now in AI. So when you look at when I was at Harvard a couple of years ago, I started off wearing my Harvard hat. We did I go every year for a week. 80 CEOs, there's 150 CEOs from 80 countries. And it was all about the great digital transformation. And companies that went through the great digital transformation before COVID actually did really well, because they understood all the dynamics. Even Domino's Pizza had gone through the digitization, and that stock has been on a tear. I think it's up 700%. It's hard to believe, delivering pizza. But they knew what type of pizza you wanted. They knew everything about you, and they started to do the data mining on it. We see Moderna. They were very early on being digitized, everything from the research to manufacturing a vaccine. So with that, Bitcoin is part of the great digital transformation, and it is the spoke that's going to keep the wheel turning. It's a critical spoke because it allows you to basically have digital wealth. It's not gold. It's digital. It's as portable wealth. It's not the Deutschmark that you used to have in your pocket. Now it's euros in your pocket that you would have, or US dollars. This was just your portable wealth. It's now become Bitcoin. And I think that idea is going to grow. And Hive is well positioned. We've seen more difficulty, more people coming in to compete to bid on the Bitcoin mining infrastructure. So last year we were about 1% of the global network. In the past 3 years, we produced 8,000 Bitcoin. We have 2,200, 23, something like that on our balance sheet, which is great. We've upgraded our whole suite. So when this halving takes place, we're still profitable. And what's really been exciting is that when we were mining Ethereum, we learned everything about GPUs. We bought a lot of NVIDIA chips, just under $100 million worth of them. We got our money back mining Ethereum, and now we're building out our high performance computing, which is really AI. And AI to function needs these NVIDIA chips. And so we're in downtown Stockholm. We're downtown Montreal. We're looking at going in other downtown city cores, especially near universities. So we'll explore Germany, where we're coming with our H100s and come into these data centers. It's just going to grow. So we think it's really important that it's this unprecedented computational power with these chips. They consume a lot less electricity. The big mega fact took place 3 weeks ago when Amazon, through their digital world called AWS, they purchased a nuclear reactor. Now think of the difference. Germany shuts them down. They get into a power problem, but Amazon is buying their own nuclear reactor. They spent $600 million buying a 900 megawatt electricity because they need it for the AI build out. So Hive is there. Hive is positioned. And we said a year ago that our performance was $250,000 for the first quarter, then get it up to $250,000 a month, and then $250,000 a week. And we are at $250,000 a month. Several months ago, we're at the cusp of $250,000 a week. And by the fall, will be $250,000 a day. So we're in a very good position to really build out and participate. Hive is a unique position company because we're sustainable. We use green energy. And we take those molecules of electricity and we recycle them. We heat a building in Montreal 5 times bigger after we mined. That molecule doesn't disappear. It keeps working. And now with the AI business, we see it's very, very exciting in that journey as we build out that part of Hive.
Great. Frank, we talked a lot. I learned a lot. Thank you very much for that. In the end, I would really love to know what is your main advice for especially people in my age, the younger generation, but also for people in the higher age. What is your main advice for people that want to become successful, or either how to deal with the current situation?
First of all, is be grateful. Mm-hmm. Grateful you're born in a great country. You weren't born in the poorest area of South America or Africa. You're born in the most powerful manufacturing country, pound for pound, the best in the world. You're born in a country where theoretical physics exploded to where we are, taken to quantum physics. It's remarkable when you think about where you're born. And every day you wake up, you've got to be thankful. And after you've got that in your heart, you're grateful, you then say, now, how can I go and follow and emulate other great entrepreneurs? Read about other entrepreneurs. Lots of content on YouTube. There's lots of content on podcasts. What do they do? How do they overcome their challenges and difficulties? What makes them resilient? From that is really important. You have to be resilient. You have to be determined to go out and build a business, but follow other people that have done it and be grateful. And thank you much for this interview.
Great. Frank, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm pretty sure we will meet again soon. Thank you and have a great day.
Take care, my friend.
Frank, thanks.